Mr. Clerk, I appoint the following legislature to the standing committees for the 2023-2024 legislative session. Families, Children, and Seniors, Stephanie Young, Chair. Betsy Capia, Vice Chair. Carol Glanville, Sharon McDonald, Noah Arbit, Kimberly Edwards, Doug Wozniak, Minority Vice Chair. Gina Johnson, Joseph Fox, Neil Frisky. Sincerely, Joe Tate, Speaker of the House.
Madam Clerk, would you please take the attendance?
Chair Young,
Present.
Representatives Capia,
Here.
Glanville,
Present.
Arbit, Edwards,
Present.
McDonald,
Present.
Wozniak,
Here.
Fox,
Yep.
Frisky,
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Representative Coffey moves to adopt Tuesday at noon in room 326, the House as a normal day, and location for meetings of the House Family, Children, and Seniors Organizational Meeting. Will the clerk please take the vote?
Chair Young,
Yes.
Representatives Capia,
Yes.
Glanville,
Yes.
Arbit, Edwards,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Frisky,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, no nays, no pass. The time, day, and location is adopted.
Thank you. The House Committee of Family, Children, and Seniors will follow Chapter 9 stated in the House Standing Rules that were adopted on the House floor. Now, I would like the members of the committee to take a few minutes to introduce themselves. We're all new to this, and it's an exciting time in this 102nd legislature. So with that, I would like to start with the Majority Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm Representative Betsy Kofia. I represent the 103rd District. I'm a former county commissioner in Grand Traverse County in northern Lower Michigan. My district includes half of Grand Traverse, all of Leelanau County, and 2 townships in Benzie County. I have a bachelor's in social work. My professional experience includes as a Head Start social worker serving the families in that 3-county area. I also have experience as a public school classroom employee working with children with special needs. And I'm honored to be Majority Vice Chair, having a chance to work on behalf of Michigan's children, family, and seniors, particularly our most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Glenn.
Good morning, everyone. Carol Glanville, 84th District. I serve Granville, Walker, and the northwest side of Grand Rapids. Where was I going? Oh, sorry. My previous experience to this committee as a city commissioner in Walker, I was on the Kent County Community Action Board, governing board. So some experience there with our seniors and some of the programming that I'm sure we'll be talking about here, and also have been very active with our Area Agency on Aging and partnering with our local AARP. My professional experience is as an educator, pre-K through college and master's level education, so lots of experience working with our kiddos and families as well. So looking forward to the work that we'll be doing in this committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Kimberly Edwards. My district is 12, which covers East Point, Roseville, and a small section of the east side of Detroit. My experience is I'm a limited license master's level social worker. I've worked in several nonprofit organizations including child welfare, such as foster care adoptions and children aging out of foster care. I also have experience with infant mental health. And I am eager to get everything started because I understand, though, even though I have 20 years of experience, there's still work that needs to be done.
I come to this committee as more of a consumer of some of the needs that we have in this area. My name is Sharon McDonald. I serve District 56, which is Troy, Clawson, and edges of Royal Oak, Birmingham, and Bloomfield Township. I have a family of adoption. My children have in schools had both an IEP and a 504. And my mother, it took 10 years for her to go down to a level where she is currently in a nursing home in end-stage Alzheimer's. So I've been through a lot of the systems that we'll be talking about in this agency, and I'm very interested in making a difference.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Somehow I got left off the membership list, but that's okay. We'll fix it. Anyway, my name is Doug Wozniak. I'm from Shelby Township, Macomb Township. It's my area. I'm a graduate at University of Michigan. Go Blue. And yeah, I have a degree in mathematics in 1969. I got my law degree from MSU in 1998.
Go green.
My wife's a Sparty, so I live with that every day. And she says I married up. So anyway, I've got one of each. Matter of fact, coincidentally, I was in the same law class with Gretchen. Excuse me, Miss Governor Gretchen Whitmer, yeah. So I'm also an elder law attorney. I'm a real estate broker. I've worked closely with Medicaid patients, trying to get services. And I still have my own law firm, and we work with older people quite often. And we do quite a bit of estate planning to make sure that people can get the coverage they need if they become injured. I can do a lot more, but I'll save that for later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Representative Fox.
Okay, Joseph Fox, and I represent, I represent the 101st District, and the 101st stretches from Newaygo County to the north to Cadillac. So pieces of Mason, pieces of Oceana, Lake, and also Wexford. And probably first and foremost about me, I'm a Jesus follower. I've been married 40 plus years. I have 4 kids, 12 grandkids, so that's kind of my family and children piece. And I, for the last 7 years, was the director of the Newaygo County Commission on Aging, and think Meals on Wheels, buses, vans, homemakers, et cetera, worked lots with AAA and other agencies for aging. And we had the distinct privilege of my wife and I being the caregivers for my mom for the last year, and which has been very special for us. Previous to the Commission on Aging, I was a teacher for about a dozen years, a principal for about a dozen years, and as far as education goes, I went through Spring Arbor College, and there I majored in psych and philosophy of religion. And then I went to Calvin Theological Seminary and got a Master of Divinity. I am an ordained minister. And then I did a lot of teaching in Kalamazoo, and so there they asked me to get a teaching certificate. I did that through Western, and a counseling psychology master's from Western. And since I continued in education leadership, I did an education leadership, I call it a professional degree or an ABD, all but dissertation, from Eastern Michigan University. So it's a privilege to be on this committee, and thank you very much.
Hi, Neil Frisky. I represent the 107th District. My district is all of Charlevoix County, all of Emmett County, 2 townships in Sheboygan County, about the eastern 2/3 of both Mackinac and Chippewa counties in the Upper Peninsula. I have 4 sons, 5 grandkids. Our family has an orchard. That's where I grew up, so I have a lot of history in agriculture. I currently have a property management, maintenance, landscape business, and I am looking forward to serving on this committee and making an impact, hopefully.
Thank you. So good to be here. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm serving the House District 78, which is 4 counties between Lansing and Grand Rapids, Eaton, Ionia, Berry, and parts of 4 counties, and Kent. My background is mostly in the business of healthcare business, patient advocate support, the insurance, looking mostly at insurance, Medicare, Medicaid. I also have a license as a health insurance agent, mostly serving the Medicare world. And I have also taught in and worked in and through the various types of education that we have in the state of Michigan, everything except for a charter school. I'm a single parent, and I've worked with nonprofits in pregnancy and adoption, human trafficking, helping women have a safe place to come after coming out of something so traumatic, and with faith-based networks to assist the community in every way possible. Thank you.
As I remember my button. It's a little rusty, it's been a while. But last but not least, so your chair, I happen to be a MSU graduate, James Madison College, International Relations. I'm also a licensed ordained minister, mom of 2 adult children. One is an animation graduate, and one graduated from Michigan State, the Broad College of Business. I used to work for Detroit Area Agency on Aging, did a lot of work with them for a few years before going on to work for 4 mayors in the city of Detroit doing community engagement, outreach, all about problem solving. I went on to become the very first executive director of the Community Education Commission in the city of Detroit, designed to eliminate barriers our babies face in trying to simply get a quality public education. I also had the opportunity to serve on the Adoption and Foster Care Task Force that was in the House that was appointed by then Speaker Jason Wentworth. And then I'm so pleased to say that I'm a member of the Michigan Child Welfare and Improvement Task Force, I believe created by our own very own governor. And one of the last things I'd like to say is I was a caregiver for both of my parents before they passed on. My mom was a diabetic, and you understand that disease eventually begins to affect everything. And so I was a caregiver for her, and then I was a caregiver for my dad, who died of lung cancer. And one of the things that I did not know is there was an official title for being a child who just simply took care of their parent. I didn't know that there were actually resources. They took care of you, so you take care of them when their time comes around. And so I'm really looking forward to not only continuing my work in the foster care and adoption space and everything that we do with our children, but also with our seniors, and creating some more help, assistance as it relates to caregivers and caregiving. It is a thankless job that really requires our attention. So that's just a little bit, you know how the governor gives highlights. That's just a little taste of some of the things that we're gonna see coming through this committee. And so with that, it is my distinct privilege and honor to introduce the 2 co-chairs of the Child Welfare Improvement Task Force, 2 gentlemen that I've had the distinct pleasure to work with. Our first co-chair is the Chief Circuit and Probate Court Judge, Gregory C. Pittman of Muskegon County. And then we have Michael E. Williams, President and CEO of Orchard Children's Services. We've done some good work, but we have so much more work to do, and it's really gonna be, I encourage you all to listen intently, because we put out a report on the work that we've done, and these gentlemen are gonna give us some background on what we've done and what we plan to do. Gentlemen, again, thank you for being here with us.
Chairman Young, thank you so much for the honor to each of you, the members of this committee, and to the staff assembled and all who are here and interested in this important work. My name is Gregory Pittman, as Rep. Young introduced. I am from Muskegon, born and raised in Muskegon County, so Representative Fox, we kind of chew a little bit of the same turf. And I have the privilege of serving as a family court judge in my hometown for the last 25 years. And we really are pleased with the opportunity to bring to this committee this information and this proposal, and hopefully to garner your support in the incredibly important work of trying to make sure that children, and by extension their families, are safe and whole in this community and in our state as much as possible. I too, just by some connection with you, I too was a caregiver for my mother, God rest her soul. And that's really what drew me back to the state of Michigan. Michigan State grad, went to law school at Indiana University and was living in Indianapolis when needed back home to provide some level of care, and have been there ever since. So it's an honor to be here. That's just a little bit about me. I'll allow my esteemed co-chair to introduce himself as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Williams, Michael E. Williams, and I tell people the E stands for everything, because as you know, in this business, you have to be able to do a little bit of everything in order to be successful. I'm originally born, I was the first one in my family born in Flint, Michigan, when Flint was one of the greatest cities it could be. And we've seen what has occurred over the last few decades. But more importantly, I first one in my family to go to college, so I had no one to call to ask questions. So that journey was, I went to Albion College, where I played basketball and ran track, and I'm in the Hall of Fame there, but that's secondary to anything that we're talking about today. Went to Eastern Michigan, got my master's, applied for law school, was gonna go to law school, but I got a job in the summer working at a residential treatment center, and that changed the course of my life. I saw what I had not experienced. I didn't have a father in the home, and these children needed someone to look up to that looked like them, to really help them to go through the barriers. I currently serve Orchards Children's Services, but my experience have led me to running programs in New York at Berkshire Farm Center. I've been to Italy and Germany to look at issues and seeing the similarities, issues young people face, and we'll see that the world is very small when you talk about children. And it's really important that the globalness of this committee makes me feel proud. I really think it's important, and you'll see some of that duplicated in this task force. But I want to thank you for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to serve with my esteemed co-chair, the Honorable Greg Pittman. Also, the work of the committee has been nothing but impressive. Having have discussed these issues for over 25 years, this is the first time we've had the globalness that we have now in terms of experiences, the commitment. There's 3 F's that I really back up with this thing. That's fact, that's family, and there's feelings. And sometimes we lose the argument because we're so concerned about things that had nothing to do with moving progress along for these children and families. We're in a different world. It's different from the standpoint of technology. Children are able to bully. I knew who my bullies were, and I was able to avoid them and not become one. It's really important that we understand that this task force, having been a part of 20-some-odd years of issues facing, the elephant no longer is invisible in the room. We have a very strong concern about the disparity that our children face, based off things that they had nothing to do with, based off where they were born, based off the color of their skin, based off their culture. And until we really address those from a universal perspective, we will continue to have some of the issues we have. We can no longer allow ourselves to let crisis be the reason we make decisions. Care should be the reason we make decisions about children and families, and that's what we're here to represent. So I really want you to look at the list of individuals that are a part of this task force. Both the judge and I want you to know that their voices were not only listened to, but they were heard. Too many times we say we need a voice, but we know that we lend an ear, and now we're acting on that, and our presentation will show you that in many ways. And I also like to thank the Department of Health and Human Services leadership who formed the task force and gave us the autonomy to do the work. So hats off to Director Hertel and Director Starling for allowing that, because sometimes they become barriers in the progress, but they allowed us to really look at the facts that we're going to present to you today. And there's much work to be done, but this is a catalyst, and we need your support. So with that, I'll turn it over to Judge.
All right, thank you, Mike. As you can see, as Mike was speaking, I went to the next slide to show just a few of the members who are part of the task force, including, of course, your chair here today. So what is this Child Welfare Improvement Task Force? It is a time-limited task force that has the responsibility to provide legislative policy and practice recommendations to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Specifically, we want to be really serious about redesigning what happens at the beginning of circumstances that cause children to have to come into some level of care. That front-end response should be free from bias and should distinguish between crisis and a need for family services and support, and there's a difference. And we should be very serious about making sure that we identify those differences. We want to be able to reduce the disparities, racial disparities in child welfare outcomes. That can be done by increasing the use of supported, safe kinship care, which is a primary motivation for us. The improved access to community mental health services. I know that is an all-encompassing situation and idea, and a very difficult matter for you as legislators to try and get your arms around and figure out how to help us in this state to deal with those mental health services and the issues that arise. And we want to be able to eliminate the improper placements in residential settings. There is a place, there is a purpose for residential care, but it should not be simply the default when we are frustrated or cannot figure out how to adequately tailor, if you will, to the circumstance of children and families who come into the need of these services. So if we look at this problem statement, children are entering foster care when they could be placed safely with relatives or fictive kin. And for those who would look from the outside, that would seem like a pretty, that makes a lot of sense. But our systems are such at this point in time that that's not necessarily always the manner in which these things are approached. So the recommendation would be to increase specialized services and supports for relatives and fictive kin caregivers to be able to be helpful and present and available to serve children who are in difficult circumstances. One of our goals is to create a kinship-first culture. We should move to the idea that the best place for a child who has to leave his immediate home is with those who are most related to that child by kinship. We want to increase the number of children in kinship care placements. We need to be able to remove the barriers to safe placement with kin, and we'll talk about some of these things in a moment. We want to enhance the awareness, the training, licensing, and support of and for kinship placements. Some of the strategies that will be involved include establishing baseline data, and I think we've begun the good work there to track and share that data so that we are not just working on opinion, but we have fact to back it up. And what we are here today for, to propose to the legislature that, one, there would be a family finding pilot program established, and two, that the Kinship Advisory Council would be enhanced through your support here today. There are monitoring indicators that we want to be able to utilize, including identifying priorities, tracking the use of licensed fictive kin, and tracking youth placed with relatives within 7 to 30 days, and that's a pretty significant time frame. If we're successful in making what I would call from the bench good placements within that first 7 to 30 days, we are that much further down the road towards a good outcome for that child and for those families. So we want to increase the number of relative placements within that 7 to 30 days of the necessary removal of a child from difficult circumstances. And we want to increase the proportion of Black, Native, and Latinx children in relative homes. That, growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in, there were so many people who may not necessarily have lived with their immediate caregivers, their immediate family, their parents or whomever, but there were people in that community and in that neighborhood who were family and caregivers to those children. And that's an important thing in these types of communities, as well as communities across the spectrum. And why shouldn't we be able to access that opportunity for children who have to be removed from their immediate family circumstance?
We also know that children always want to return to family. I didn't know until I was an adult that the 4 women that I called my aunt were never related to my mom. But I know if something had occurred with my mom, that was where I would have went before, quote, the system. I always tell the children we're all part of a system, whether it's obeying the guidelines on the street. We're all part of this system. And I think that segregation, is to say you're in the system, is really a negative term that really allows them opportunity to fail. We also have an opportunity to look at where Michigan is. We have 9,000, almost 10,000 children in foster care. Running a foster care agency, which is what Orchards used to be, was difficult work. But we found that we have to move where the children are. And Orchards currently now is serving what we call family preservation. And that is preserving families at all levels. As you all indicated, the state is very blessed to have so many different cultures, and that's the richness of Michigan. However, we have kind of narrowed that down to serve only a certain part of the population. And I think we really need to look at how that affects children and families. These statistics were born out of facts. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize MPHI and the work that they do. I'm old enough to remember that I struggled to get to a computer because only reason I did because the typewriter ribbon was no longer sold. And I think it's really important that we realize that the cultural shifts have to be heard. We sometimes blame the children for things that we put on them. You all have went through what we all have went through the last 3 years. There's no such thing as COVID. Michigan rose through it, but our children were lost sometimes through it. Now, at all levels, the report today says most children are at least a half school year behind, just due to the fact that they didn't have in class. And most of us know it's the relationship with those individuals called teachers that don't get the credit that they deserve, that changed the course of our lives. Disparity in Michigan's business centers, Muskegon. I think Muskegon is a great area. And I say that because some people would look at Orchards, we serve 15 counties, none of them are Muskegon. Orchards serves the state. And until we really start recognizing this and take the borders off the counties and really do what's needed in the particular areas that is needed, it's really vital. And I can't think of a better county to start to look at this work in a finite way, in a way that we can best train CPS workers who have the ability to remove a child, whether that's a child going to school with clothes dirty, or whether it's a child, as you've seen recent reports where a 6-year-old had bought a gun to school. We don't want to be marked with the same kind of things that some counties have. Everybody knows about Memphis today, and it's not for the right reasons. But those were children at one point in time that became officers. And we need to make sure that our officers are representing, and when I say officers, I don't mean police, I mean people, social services. We serve as officers to the state and to these children. Next slide. So the request is quite simple. We need your support to start. any good race has a start. You know, I'm an avid athlete. I used to be able to jump, but now I just have a hard time walking. but there's more discussions about how the Kansas City game ended than there are about children being hurt. And we're going to change that. We've got the responsibility to change that. And I can't think of a better or a better partner. It's very unusual, not to say it's bad or good, but it's very unusual to have the breadth of experiences that we have on this task force. When the last thing that we brought to the task force were people who've experienced these children, foster parents, families, mothers, and sometimes their voices are not heard to the degree. So everyone's voice. We have the person who represents kinship care here. It is really vital that we have an opportunity to start something that will continue to change the vitality of Michigan and make better citizens of all the citizens. And that's our responsibility. And that's what we are committed to do. I also serve as the head of the Ethics Committee for the City of Westland. I was one of the original members of the Michigan Health Endowment Fund, which focuses on children and seniors. You know, the term caregiver, the term single mom, I say we don't use that at Orchards anymore because biology speaks to that. You are a mom, and that is the most important role that anyone can play. So I think it's really important that we look at how we sometimes narrow people down to things. And I think the wording does make a difference. But more important, the actions. And the actions that we can take, that you can take, will start something that will be historic in the state of Michigan. And I appreciate your support in that. And I think Muskegon would be a great start.
If I could just add on to that, of course, thank you. I will recommend you to the Visitors Bureau in Muskegon County. I think they'd appreciate you there.
In the spring.
In the spring. Yeah, it's pretty tough with that lake effect stuff going on over there all the time. Muskegon, you know, as a judge, one of the things that we have come to understand is that Muskegon is sort of looked at as a bit of a microcosm of what the state of Michigan looks like as far as demographics and some of the challenges that are going on across the state. We have a wonderful relationship between our courts and our social service agencies. We have the disparity, as you saw in the previous slide, of what occurs with communities of color as it relates to kinship care. This is a perfect place for the opportunity to measure how we can do better, can be studied, can be implemented and then studied. And the request here for funding to be able to get that pilot off the ground is what would serve that purpose so very, very well. So we're ready to go in Muskegon County to provide you with the empirical information necessary to hopefully replicate the success of increased kinship care for children across this entire state. The other portion of our request is for the Kinship Advisory Council. The work that would be done would really require, I'm sorry.
Judge, excuse me, before you move forward.
Yes.
I want you to talk a little bit more about how you see the kinship pilot working. Give us like examples so that we can all wrap our heads around it.
Well, from what I see from the bench, let me bring that perspective. I think that's a bit of the value that I add to this task force is that that's a perspective that's normally not in the room. And what I see from the bench is we see social workers and folks who are on that very front end who have clear ideas about what they could probably do to help improve the situation of children. But their hands are sort of tied or they don't have the resources available or necessary to be able to do the things that I think give us the opportunity for a more successful outcome in that 7 to 30-day range. Children are removed from a family, and there are people who would be very wonderful caregivers, except that they don't know that this is happening. because there is no opportunity for those social workers to be able to utilize resources to seek out that very natural cohort that would be available to give a good placement within that 7 to 30 days. If we are successful in being able to identify that sort of person, that kinship placement, there are the barriers that exist as far as licensing. And there are some natural barriers. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of misunderstanding possibly, and maybe even a little bit of distrust as to what is occurring. What are you doing? Why do you want to walk through my house? Why do I have to give you this? Why do I have to tell you that? I just want to take care of this kid because that's my sister's baby, right? And if we are able to normalize and make and demystify and take away some of the mistrust that you're here and they're in trouble, now I may be getting into some kind of trouble too. If we're able to take those barriers away, we increase not only the opportunity for that particular circumstance, but we increase the availability and the interest by others who hear how this goes, and they start to even begin to step up. We want to be able to put people on the ground who are able to focus on the idea of how to identify and bring people safely into the process of being available to care for children who have been removed from those that they're related to.
Yeah, and to that point, one of the most used words in our field today is trauma. There is no greater trauma than being removed from people that you don't know. Currently, there is no system where the CPS or anyone else can identify the resource to look for family. We run the adoption resource consultants at the Orchards, and we have actually hired private detectives sometimes to find family. And we've seen the success rate of our children go up because, can you imagine, and I use this as an example for our children, taking a school bus to school, something happens at your home, someone shows up and you can't get on that school bus anymore. You don't have a home. And we're telling 4 and 5-year-old children, then when they act out, we continue to medicate, to do things where sometimes that aunt that wasn't an aunt who loved that child, who he or she knew, could create some normalcy to his life and lessen the trauma. And our CPS workers need to be funded so that they can have some resources the same way we've been able to raise private dollars for those particular situations. And we find family. Family is there for most children. If it isn't, then you need foster care. We do need residential treatment. But we want to lessen that trauma and not use that as an excuse for a child failing. So I would really like you to consider looking at the entire child and the entire picture, and more importantly, what is family to individuals? Because it is all about relationships. People do more out of relationships than they do out of rules.
Thank you for the question. That kind of helps humanize what we're talking about here. You know, I wrestle with the idea of being too anecdotal from my perspective as a judge. One of the things that Mike said is, you'll be amazed, in the worst circumstances, those kids still want to go home. Mm-hmm. They still want mom. They still want dad. I don't care how badly they have been disappointed and let down by them because of the behaviors that they may be involved in. And one of the cases I had, if I could take just a minute, one of the cases I had was the removal of children placed immediately into foster care, and there were people in the community who were available. Muskegon is small enough that I know who these people are. Cases in my court. Now, I'm not in the business of telling DHHS what to do. They certainly know how to handle their business, but I did make the suggestion from the bench that there are some people that I know would be a good placement for them, and gave them that information. long story short, those children were finally placed with that particular relative who was really open to the process. But I can't be in every courtroom. I can't be in every place. And there are other judges who probably feel exactly the same way. We need to have that person and those people in that process at the very beginning who are the ones who are saying, wait a minute, I know that they come from the Lakeside neighborhood. Let me go over and talk with those folks and see what's going on over there. So that's the import of this pilot program.
And we want to make sure we have a little time for questions. But again, I just want to share something. There's a young lady in this room today who we met today who's wearing her grandfather's tie. She set up our IT. She went to college. It didn't work for her. And she's transitioned now to having a job here. What would happen if we took away the grandfather's tie memory from her? Who would she be? And I say that because we get to know our children. They get to know us. And if we're really doing our job as a nonprofit, our goal should be to be out of business. We want if every child was safe, we still be able to do other things in society. So this is not something that we're doing to advance our cause. It's something to advance the cause of children and families. So I just want to end there and take any questions that you have.
Yes, thank you so much for being here and sharing that information with us. Telling those stories. We have to humanize this work. People who know me know that I'm big about sharing, keep the names out of it, but knowing what the story is, because that one story can be multiplied times 100 and sometimes times 1,000. And so that lets us know just how serious this work is. Madam Clerk, do we have any questions? Anybody have any questions? Okay. Representative Fox?
Yeah, just two quick questions. So the first is about licensing for kin. Is that mainly licensing of the home, okay, that you're going with? And the second one is when it comes to these family relationships, is there going to be any training component to this program? Working with these parents. That maybe they need some skills, maybe they, so those two questions, licensing and training.
Yes, the state can make exceptions to some licensing barriers that we have, but so absolutely at home would be also monitored in the same way they would be if they were in a foster care home. We would be supportive of the family, but again, that family would need some of the support that right now is a barrier in terms of funding. When you bring a new person to the home, as you know, particularly a 16-year-old, the refrigerator gets open a little bit more than it did when that person wasn't there. So a limited amount of support to make sure that that person who takes that child in is supported. But yeah, they would be managed. There'd be social workers assigned to that home the same as they would be if they were in a foster care home. But now they're with family, and that family would get the support they need. And I think we would build a community in a better way. So the answer to your question is yes on both respects.
Thank you. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here with us today. You are obviously identifying something that is a big hole. I know of Muskegon is you have some of the best mental health systems in the state. Amazing. The best after-school programs done by charity groups. You have some of probably the strongest pregnancy centers in the entire state as well. And I think Muskegon would be a great place to do any pilot, given that you have already such strong networks of government, community, faith-based organizations, and a population that at least has enough need to show a benefit and a relationship that would work. Is there a way to connect the dots for us? Whatever the amount of money, whether it's $600,000 or it's something else, where the money is going to fill the holes, exactly like Representative Fox mentioned, training, licensing, things like that. But what else is it going to fill? And what is that relationship with CPS, the police force, the community organizations? How many churches do you have involved already in Muskegon to help you as well? Your experience, my experience is churches have a lot of people who often are ready to give of their time, energy, money. They just need to be asked.
That's right. I agree with you wholeheartedly. You know, since I've been on the bench in these 25 years, one of the things that I have really been heartened by in the county of Muskegon is the relationships that you speak of. You know, there are certain places sometimes where CPS and the approach of the courts and the approach of the faith-based communities and others doesn't quite sync. You know, maybe folks see things a little differently and they approach it a little differently. That's why I'm excited about the opportunity to do this in Muskegon, because we have those relationships. Again, Muskegon is small enough, born and raised there. You can go and ask anybody, and that's the little Pittman boy from the Heights whose father ran the store on the corner of Reardon and Barney Street. But those relationships are also in place when we are able to, for instance, have the recruitment of new foster families. And we reach out to the faith-based community and ask them, would you sponsor a foster family awareness evening? And the room is packed. We have the relationships of quarterly meetings with CPS, with the courts, where we sit and we talk about issues so they don't become problems. We stand in front of them instead of having to come from behind when they begin to roll. So those dots that you speak about, Representative Johnson, getting the opportunity to connect are there. Communications, conversations have already sort of begun about the idea that we would be potentially a pilot for this kind of work. I was just speaking with our county prosecutor, of all people, about this, and they are prepared to, as in their role of representing CPS, to be able to be that much more helpful to CPS in the legal aspects of what is going to occur in their representation. So we feel good about those connections, if that helps to answer those questions. You know a lot about Muskegon. Where I'm sorry, I forgot where you indicated you were from?
Well, I was born and raised Lansing, but in my work in the healthcare business and with nonprofits and with the faith network across the state, I have ended up in Muskegon a lot of times, and I've just been astonished at how many, you could look at a number of sectors in Muskegon, and they could be a model for the state in all sorts of ways. Some are government funded, a lot of them are just faith-based charities. And I'm really impressed. I think you've got so much to work with and to really teach the rest of the state in all sorts of ways. But I'd love to see a faith-based, it doesn't have to be faith-based organization, but more of them involved. I mean, I know a lot of people in Muskegon with some free time, and they are intelligent, educated, care. They would love to be involved with something like this. That's why I was asking, how many churches do you already have involved in something like this?
Okay, well,
We gotta go.
we're going to allow you all to perhaps talk to the representative after we have time for just one more question. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to get out of here. I have a press conference at 1 o'clock. But so with that, Representative Edwards?
My question is not short.
It's
but
not short?
I'll make it as short as possible. First, thank you for bringing this conversation to the forefront. I know that with my experience with child welfare, we have families who aren't related, like you mentioned, having aunts that they are not aunts. I'm sorry, this is really emotional because you deal with so much, and children in foster care go through so much. And being able to change the tone of what we define as kinship is really important, because they have other individuals that they relate to that we need to look at for placement to reduce the trauma associated with removal.
Yeah,
I
and just real
appreciate you
quickly.
for bringing that up.
And just real quickly, KC Foundation is also, Family Foundation is also very engaged in this process as well from a national, global. But the thing that we're missing, and I don't want to miss, is that CPS workers need some resources to find family, because right now it's removal and go to the next case. It's removal and go to the next case. So we need to slow the train down, give them the resources in Muskegon to make those connections with those churches, to build those relationships up. And then the workers need to be rewarded for their success in working with children versus placement. You know, when I changed the metrics for my staff to see education, we went from a 50% graduation rate to 95% in Flint and Detroit, because that became, and then bringing back universal language. Anybody over 40 can complete some sentences that now would be destructive. Your parents told you they bought you in, and you know how to figure that. But that was the respect that you have for family controlled everything. And when that gets lost, and that's what we want these CPS work to expand family for these children. We've got people in this audience that work very hard on kinship care, Michigan's Children, all of those things. We are no longer going to be separate. We're going to be one collective group of people focused on helping children and families. So thank you for your time and attention. I know you have to go, but we'll be here.
Well, again, gentlemen, thank you so much for the good work that has started and that we're going to continue to provide to provide relief and the support that our families need and that our children absolutely deserve. And so if that, Representative Coffey moves to excuse any absent members. We did have one absent member on today. There being no objection, the motion prevailed by unanimous consent. That sound good? Okay. There being no further business before the committee will now stand adjourned. And thank you all so much.
Thank you.
What did I forget? Oh.